Hello and welcome to the End User Talk podcast. I'm your hostess, Jameelah, your Lady in Tech. KAINONAUT, welcome to the End User Talk podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Absolutely.
How did you get started in art?
In art in general, I've kind of been drawing since I was a kid. Like every single person, like every sibling that I have, we're all artists in different like facets of art. So I'm like an illustrator and I'm honestly pretty much everything. We have like hairstylists and animators and tattoo artists and fashion designers. Like all of my brothers and sisters are very talented, very skilled. And I believe it all kind of like comes from our mom. she kind of like was the spark originally. That and late 90s craze of anime. I remember my older brother getting into anime and he influenced his younger brother, who was still my older brother. And, you know, it kind of just like kept spiraling down to me. And like we all kind of like picked up, believe it or not, from Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, it was like a huge catalyst in like beginning this whole journey. And, you know, the first drawing I ever did, like seriously, was one of the character Gohan from Dragon Ball Z. And I remember it vividly, but I really, really wish that I had that drawing. But yeah.
So you all are a family of artists. So that's actually very cool. So that means you are self-taught?
Oh, I absolutely am self-taught. I never took like specific art classes. When I was in college, I did take some prereqs, and that wasn't necessarily like art specific. They were kind of like graphic design classes and stuff like that. But my whole life, I've kind of just like 100% like taught myself. Just sketched every day, be it in the little crannies in my notebooks, sketchbooks, copy paper, you name it. I've probably drawn on it myself with Sharpie and stuff. Being a kid, I've always been one to draw.
Now, with your journey here, have you improved, or how have you improved or developed in your craft?
So the strongest thing that I found, like in making art period, the best way I found to get better at art is to have like a strong support network. Like I surrounded myself with artists that also want to get better and aren't afraid of critique. That's what we call ourselves, the collective Studio Art Divinity. We work on projects together and stuff. That, and rather than complaining about like not being at a certain level, what I do is compare myself to a younger me. Like I want to be better than the artist I was yesterday. But like growing up, I always kind of like thought, how happy would this art that I'm currently doing, how happy would it make 9-year-old me? Like how happy would he be if I could go back in time and hand him a drawing that I just did? Like would he freak out? Would he ask me if I'm working for Nintendo or like Capcom or some big studio or something? I think he would. Like that's who I truly want to appeal to, honestly. Like I draw and I do have like a fan base, a pretty sizable fan base that care about like a bunch of pop culture things. But when it comes down to drawing in general, I care about like what I want to see. Like I typically do artwork of niche titles that I feel like don't get a lot of love, and I like to bring a lot of attention to. But like when it comes down to it, like improving as an artist, definitely surround yourself with a network of people, even if it's just friends that just want to get better at art, because they will help you more than you could like possibly imagine.
That is wonderful advice. And I think that applies to any facet of our lives, but professionally, having individuals who are there to help you improve, if you will, the constructive criticism. So I think that's great in anyone's growth and or development.
Mm-hmm.
Without growth, you cannot be better. You stated that you you dabble in a number of things. Is there a specific title?
There isn't, honestly. I'm a bit of a generalist because my creative brain, when I'm working in one single medium, like say I'm working with digital illustration, I take things from film and music and animation. I think about so many things because my brain's kind of like taste testing all these other things to add to this current dish that I'm making. Like it's just taking influences from multiple things at all times. And it's like that for all the mediums that I work in. So if I'm like directing something, or I'm like filming something, photographing something, painting something, animating creating something, I'm thinking about all of these different facets of art and how they influence what I'm currently working on. It could be fashion, fashion, what you wear influences your art style. Everything that you do influences your art style, even like down to food, like what you eat can also influence where you live, what your room looks like, everything, because everything's a constant influence on you. And when it comes down to it, what you see is what you push out, sort of. An artist only expresses what they see and like what they think they can perceive. Like they want to put ideas out, but it's based on the influences in their life. So I kind of try to cast a really wide net originally and then try to hone in on a very specific thing in that net when I need it. Like try to gather a lot of information, just bring it all together in a single product.
It sounds like it's important to you to make sure that you don't put yourself in a niche category, if you will. You're casting a wide net. Your feelings, your emotion, there are so many things that drive an artist's creative process. You also slipped in filming and directing.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Recently, I've kind of been like on this filming kick. I've been studying a lot of films. My favorite director, well, I have two, and they're actually, or one of them is influenced by another. I love Katsuhiro Otomo. He did the animation Akira, and he was influenced by Stanley Kubrick, who did the film 2001: Space Odyssey, and that's my favorite film of all time. And I could watch that film a million times because it's aesthetically pleasing. But I really want to like get into directing. I recently did like this whole social media, I guess, push for a video game series called Jet Set Radio, and I did like a little short movie. It's like 3 minutes, but it had to get like a lot of I had to fit a lot of content and information into it, but have it be like have it pop really fast and like have it very easy to understand for this hashtag on this project to like pop off. And it took a lot of understanding and a lot of studying to do it. Yeah, I guess I got it done, and it was pretty successful. So.
That is amazing. Was it a difficult task for you, or was it what you expected with all the work that may have gone into even just that 3-minute segment?
It's absolutely difficult. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's a lot of information to take in, and I'm not like some huge professional. I'm very amateur at film, but luckily I've done animation since I was like really young. I used to draw on my computer with a mouse and try to make little animations and everything. So I kind of had like an idea of camera, but I also went to college. I took a couple classes in filmmaking just to get like an understanding of things. Streaming, I use like a 4K camera that's like definitely overkill for a stream. But in buying this expensive camera that I use to try to get the best quality possible, I had to like understand the camera itself. So I had to go around taking pictures of things, making sure white balance is correct and the ISO is correct and exposure is correct. So I had a lot of things to learn just so I could get into this. And even now, I feel like I'm not even out of the egg. Like I'm still incubated at this point.
Is it important for someone to put a lot of focus in investing in the right equipment? Is that something that someone starting out should focus on initially?
I feel like it's sort of different with streaming, but for every facet, I think that equipment does absolutely matter, but you need to take into consideration your budget and what you want to do. You can't overshoot or you'll be in debt. And if you have like a really small like install base, a lot of people probably won't see that quality, so it might be overkill. What really gets people into like streaming or like enjoying things is like the content. That's like the most important thing. Like people go to streams for the personality. You can have the most amazing art, you can have the most amazing video or play the best game ever, but like what people are there for is the interactivity. But when it comes to art, I think that the equipment, the pencils and paper and everything absolutely matters. It absolutely does. There are brands that I've tried out recently that I've never tried ever before, and pencils that I've never tried before, tools that I've never tried before, I've tried recently that are like insane, that I wish that I had known about for years. And it completely changes how I go about putting pen to paper. It's entirely important. You don't want to get wrapped up in equipment. Like that shouldn't stop your creative stride. Like, it's just something to add on top. What you need to work on more than anything is especially honing your craft, like refining it.
Great advice. I can see someone getting lost in trying to go out and purchase those things. So that's very good that you mentioned have a budget. So yes, that makes a lot of sense not to go overboard. What is your art style? And you may have already touched on this a little bit.
It's a huge conglomerate of things. It's a bunch of different influences. Starting out, I did have a very huge anime influence. Like I said, I kind of got into it due to Dragon Ball. But recently, I've kind of been trying to branch away a bit. I've been studying more Western artists that are like absolutely fantastic. Been looking at the comics industry over here, primarily in LA. But I still do look at things from the East, anime and comics over there, manga. I take from video games as well. But I'd say like what I care about more than anything currently is style and form. I really like an illustration or a character drawing anything that looks like I can just reach out and grab it. Like, it doesn't have to have shading. Like, if you know a perspective well and you know how to draw those lines just well enough that I can feel like, wow, there's like a backside to this soda bottle you just drew. That's very appealing to me. But I also like a graphic, very stylized, sharp style, like something like Jet Set Radio, the game that I'm like known for at this point in time.
I think that is so amazing. Being someone who's self-taught, does it benefit to get some training, or is that just more practice?
I feel like a ton of it. I think that whole like debate between like schooling and self-taughtness, I think that those two things, they have strengths and they have weaknesses. There are certain things that you can't pick up on. I feel you might not understand if you aren't told it. While I think going a more self-taught route is a bit more experimental, and you aren't kind of like molded into this artist that you currently are from another person's perspective. There are certain things that you won't even think to try out, like perspective grids and things like that as a self-taught artist. But thankfully we have things like the internet, we have YouTube, we have Twitch and books, ebooks, libraries. You can go out and get this information yourself. I don't think like school is entirely necessary, and it might not, okay, kind of biased here, but I don't think it's like financially a good idea. Art is not like a very strong return on investment field to get into when it comes to money. When it comes down to it, it's kind of like a mixture. I would recommend like looking into YouTube channels that like talk about these things, looking at interviews of artists that you really enjoy. I've been looking at interviews of Kim Jung-gi. He's a fantastic illustrator. He's amazing comic creator as well. He's Korean. He does amazing stuff, and the way his mind works is like very different. It's very experimental, and he didn't go to school for like what he learned, but it still shows you that like his whole thing is perspective, but he didn't go to school to get that knowledge. He's like 100% self-taught, and he's like one of the most well-known artists current. I'd recommend like kind of getting an understanding of like it's a individual case by case basis. Get an understanding of what you would like to do. Some people aren't so much into schooling. Some people prefer unhinged like drawing environment where they can just experiment and figure things out themselves. I personally am in the latter category. I do enjoy a school environment. I do enjoy an environment that isn't just like my studio. Yeah, it really depends. It entirely depends on what you need to go for. School is really good for fundamentals, but school I don't think is very good for experimentation, because you're trying to sit down and understand something specifically to implement into your own art style. So you got to kind of judge that based on where you currently are.
That is well said. You mentioned not losing you in this process. It makes sense. You want to keep that rawness there. So yeah, that's art. Definitely. Art is not, I think everyone brings their own individual perspective, their view, their raw talent and ability. And that's what makes art so creative. I mean, if you lose that creative process and you're doing too much to try to make certain that you fit in a particular category, I think you do lose yourself. With everything that you do, is there any programming or coding involved?
I actually do make games. I'm actually just now getting into learning C# for Unity. I've always done visual scripting and through graphs in Unity. I understand logic and how it works. I make make some pretty complicated systems in my games, I realized that you can only go so far with visual scripting. So I kind of just like want to understand the syntax of C#, and I literally just picked it up 3 days ago, and I think it's pretty fun. It's like making puzzles, you know? It's just like art. I think that those things go hand in hand, like science and art go hand in hand. It's really interesting, I'll say that much.
You weren't kidding. You definitely have your hand in the entire developmentation process. The fact that you understand the mechanics. I'm impressed that you're doing that much research to make sure that you understand every aspect that goes into your craft. Hats off to you for deep diving into it and learning.
Right.
Would you suggest that someone else go that route as well?
I actually would. I'd 100% enjoy if people kind of became jacks of all trades. I think that it pretty much opens up your mind, not to sound too too crazy, but like I think that what it typically does is allows you to be influenced by things that you may have never been influenced by. And there's a lot of thought, and it's really good like mental exercise, jumping from different mediums and different skill sets. And I think that it makes you overall a more like approachable person when it comes to different jobs, like wearing different hats. Like if you wanted to apply to a video game studio, you'd be able to talk to the coding side of the studio, you'd be able to talk to the art side of the studio, you'd be able to talk to the directors and the musicians and so on and so forth. It just makes you a bit more, you know what you're talking about a bit, so it makes it easier for things to translate. It's like learning multiple languages. You're genuinely more approachable because like if someone that's speaking a completely different language comes up to you and you're in a room full of people that speak English, and this person's like South Korean and they don't understand English, if you're the person that stands forward and says something in South Korean, then I'm sure they'll like appreciate that type. It's fascinating. I think that it helps the mind. I think that it helps like the being perceived. Like I feel like a lot of us as Black people, I feel like we kind of get stuck in a box. We kind of want to go shoot hoops. We kind of want to become rappers and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that, I feel. But I also feel like there's more to everything. You can pretty much do all of these things. You have like 100+ years on the earth, you know, and that's a lot of days. And I know that like a lot of times it's not like financially viable to do a bunch of things, but that's where like planning and budgeting and, you know, trying to stay on top of things comes in. I really care about showing people that like a Black young man, I'm 21 years old. I'm really young, trying to do all these things, can do this type thing, or Black people in general. And people kind of come into the Twitch stream and they say like, oh wow, yes, like some representation. I care about representation because oftentimes when I was young, I didn't have that same understanding, that same Superman to look up to, you know? I want to give that to the next generation. That's part of the reason why I have that analogy in my head, that 9-year-old me. Like you can easily swap that out for any 9-year-old kid, you know? That's a huge part of it.
And that's a good base. You bring up an interesting point, the lack of Black presence and or representation in this area or in this field. I too notice if you don't have a specific name, aware of the networks and the associations that support Black artists, it's not exclusive to art. It really is Black representation in so many areas. We are present, yet again, if you're not within those circles of information, you have no idea that there are individuals who look like you who are making contributions in these areas. Like, how can that change?
I feel like things are slowly, very gradually changing in that sphere. I do think that like a Black presence is definitely felt, and due to things like the internet, it's definitely more out there. We're a bit more, there aren't so many barriers that we have to hop. We don't have to apply for record deals or like get into this studio that has like a racist boss. There's a lot less gymnastics that we have to perform, because now you have things like Patreon, you have things like Kickstarter, you have things like social media and Twitch. Like people donate, people care about other people. If they care about the product, if they care about you, they'll definitely support you. If you're genuine about what you're doing and you really want it to be, you want to give it your all, people appreciate that type of thing. Starting out on Twitch, I didn't have anything. I had a wooden door that was broken off the hinge on a bucket, and on that bucket I put my laptop, and it was a laptop that I got from high school. My high school shut down, so they just gave us the laptops. They went bankrupt, but basically that's what I started streaming with, and now I pretty much have a whole studio with like studio lights and this expensive camera and like multiple monitors and a computer and an iPad and all these things because there were people that believed in me and enabled me. I did have a bit of a established fan base, but not a huge one. But there was just enough. There were just enough people that believed in me and talked to me. My friends and family really cared about me, so they also helped. They helped me start walking so I could eventually run. And I think that I'm kind of building up to a sprint at this point. And I mean, you never know who you'll help. Like, you never know how much $5 will help. Like, there were times when I was streaming like early on, like maybe a year and a half ago, where someone donating $5 literally just bought me lunch for the next day, and I didn't have that. It goes a long way. It really does. It genuinely does.
It is very, very important to be able to get individuals who believe in you and they want to invest. I'm happy to hear that you had that support system so early on, and no matter how hard it gets, you didn't give up. So that's also important.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say that I do think that people give up pretty easy, pretty fast, but I don't think that these things are like an instantaneous, you don't immediately get the product out of the work. It's definitely something that's a bit strenuous. It's something that you have to keep chasing, especially when it comes to art. It does not come fast. So I definitely recommend for anyone that's into it for the glory to sort of not be into it for the glory. Oftentimes you'll find artists that don't get the glory, but I think that you definitely need the passion, and you need to plan what you're doing like correctly and ask people if this plan is right. I try to invest everything that I do, all the money that I make, back into my stream or like into supplies or anything. Like, I just want to create. That's just about it. So I don't splurge on things. I don't buy the most expensive shoes or anything like that.
So this has to be a passion project. In other words, monetary based or for popularity. You have to have the passion and the desire. That term starving artists is real.
It is. 100% is.
Definitely. Okay. I wanted to ask this because I've heard this a lot. Anime. Do Black people, do we fit in that space?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. I hear a lot about Black people do not belong in the anime space. We need not to try to make a space for ourselves in anime. We don't fit. What do you say about that?
Honestly, I when it comes down to it, I think that it's a bit of a gray area. I think that I personally think that Black people shouldn't be so obsessed with like making their own quote anime, you know? I think anime, even in the name, is Japanese, right? It's the Japanese word for animation. But I think we need to work on like our own things like we always have. Like, it's okay to be anime influenced. I think 100% I am anime influenced. I love anime and everything about it. But I do believe that chasing being the next Shonen Jump or huge animation company, being the next Studio Ghibli, I don't think that that's what you want to do. I think you want to do your own thing. There's no sense in just copying. Like, we as Black people, we create things that are like insanely beautiful all the time. Like, we just walk and ooze creativity. There's no reason to like limit yourself to this very specific thing. Drawing anime eyes this specific way, having stories plotted this specific way. I don't see any sense in like wanting to mold yourself to that when we are absolutely capable of so much than just.
You know what? I agree with you. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of those cultures, they've marketed off of Black people.
Absolutely.
Our content, the things that we have naturally, the way we walk, our hairstyles, even our skin tone. They also make money and make it popular. But when we do it, we are shamed for it.
Right.
In order to try to fit this mold of what people tell us is beauty, is acceptable.
Absolutely. A huge part of this collective that I'm in, we kind of like, we're all Black artists and we all care about representation. And I know it's a bit of a meme nowadays, like representation and things in the Black community. Like, oh, you just want representation for representation's sake. I think it's absolutely important, and it's something that we are all working on. Like, there are tons of Black characters in this collective. We're all pushing for it, and it's not just like, it's not a basketball anime. It's not a rapping anime. It's not like very stereotypical things. I think that I love basketball all, I love rapping. Like, I think that stuff's dope. But there's sci-fi, there's fantasy, there's drama, there's like so many things that are possible. And I love that all of these artists that I'm currently working with, we are pushing that envelope, and we really care about that. We're kind of like tired, and all of these artists are fantastic artists, illustrators, animators, musicians, you name it, they do it. And like, picture me times 12 pretty much, I guess. But it's important to us for us to just go out and do what we want. Like, all of us have applied to studios and worked for bigger companies and tried, we have like social media presence and everything, but we're just like, why don't we just do our own thing? Why don't we just make our own projects and work on them together? Why don't we create this Marvel Cinematic Universe indie comic thing, you know, where like stories intertwine, play off of each other, and make references to each other, and little jokes between artists, and work on posters together, and go to conventions together, just like establish this presence, because I think that that's something that isn't here. Like, I can't think of a single group of Black illustrators and artists that are like really pushing that envelope specifically, like just trying to bring out this huge cascade of multiple genres, multiple art forms, games, music, illustration, comics, animation, so on and so forth. It's a huge milestone that we're trying to hit, and I'm looking forward to it. Everything's shaping up fantastic.
Well, I'd love to see what you all in your group is trying to present. How do we find these amazing artists and individuals you work with?
So a lot of these fantastic artists, they're under the umbrella that is we call Studio Arts Divinity, right? There's an Instagram account as well as a Twitter account now. They aren't like very active because we're currently in like a lot of pre-planning phase. Like, we're getting a bunch of content ready to push out in a huge burst, you know, like just come out the gates, just full sprint. But they're fantastic artists. A lot of them in the LGBTQ community, a lot of them older, younger, all skilled, all Black. And I don't know, I don't think I could have ever fallen into a better group of people. They've changed me for the better. They've helped me understand things that I never would ever understand. There's nothing as humbling, motivating, or influential as an outside experience that is completely outside of your own. And everyone comes from different backgrounds, but we kind of come together in this weird, super creative, constantly working soup. So I just love it. It's fantastic. Anyone watching this, if you can, please, not watching, but listening, take the time to look for artists that are similar to you, that care about the same things that you care. It will make a lifetime's difference in such a short time.
Have you ever suffered from creative block?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Every single week. All the time. All the time. A lot of the time you have to push through it. A lot of the time you have to do something new, try something new, see something new, or just go back to the past. A lot of the time I find myself going back to games that I played in my childhood that have really helped me, like fighting games like Street Fighter, video games like The Legend of Zelda. If you check out my stream ever, whenever you see my webcam, there's 2 huge Zelda posters behind me at all times because I just love the series so much. They kind of remind me where I established a bit of my roots when it came to the things that I like in like pop culture. And seeing like where you've come from really can inspire you. I look at art in general, it's like a diet. You can't output as much more than what you intake. It's the same as working out. Yeah, you can work out, you can lift weights 1,000,000 times, but you're not going to put on any weight if you don't eat more calories than you need. All that weight or all those calories are being burned to build your muscle. If you don't bring in more calories, no muscle is going to be built because you're just going to stand still. So that's why I go out and look at new films and try to understand new ways of doing film or animation, or check out a new comic or whatever. Like a couple days ago, a friend of mine, his name's Ultra Desi, he was explaining to me a bunch of his comic influences, and I was looking at this guy. His name is Joe Max. He's a comic book illustrator, worked with DC, and he's worked on games as well. And in looking at this guy's work, I'm just like, wow, this is actually fantastic. And you can see like he has a fan site that has his whole discography like up to like 20 years ago. And seeing this man kind of like go from where he was initially to where he is now, it's staggering. And I think that's inspirational for anyone. Just look at like even your own old work. Look at anyone's old work. Understanding that things are reachable at some point in time, it's a big claim, but I want to make something that's more impactful than the film Akira. And I don't want to, I'm saying that, and it's live now, it's recorded. support it. I can't get away from it. But it's a really tall order. It's one of the most influential films of all time at this point. I don't want to like hold myself back. Like, I feel like I can do something really crazy, really cool, really influential. I just want to like push everything out. I like to take inspiration from that thing. I'd like to take inspiration from multiple things, like at all times. I'm like consuming this art. I'm building that art, those calories, so I can work out and push something out that's new. It's a huge diet. It's literally, you feel burnt out, go check out something new. Go play a new game. Go watch a new film. Go try to understand something new. It doesn't even have to be art related. Go try picking up cooking. I guess cooking is an art, but pick up a new language, you know? Try out dancing, you know? You can get inspiration from so many different things, and that's like one of the craziest things about art. Inspiration comes from all things, because inspiration is just pretty much you getting a positive outlook, a positive feeling of what you want to portray in your own art. So you want to portray what you've experienced. You can't portray what you haven't experienced, otherwise it will be a bad portrayal. So
basically it's constantly taking in more information, learning, developing. So it's forever growing. All right. So the type of tools, are you a Mac, a PC? Do you use an iPad? What do you use as your art consumption tools?
I primarily work off of, when it comes to digital illustration, I use my iPad. I sketch traditionally. I draw everything in a sketchpad, scan it into my PC. I'm using a Windows desktop, and Team AMD over here, because I like competition. I usually send those files from my desktop to my iPad, and I do like a lot of cleanup and the coloring and everything on my iPad. So it's a little bit difficult because like that crosstalk between two different brands, you have like Windows and Microsoft and Apple. In between those, you have Clip Studio Paint. That's the application I use to do my art, and it's on the iPad as well as the PC. So it can just like send files over the cloud, over their servers to the iPad, and it's literally like a Mac / Windows application on the iPad, like ported directly over. Same settings and everything. Honestly, I think it's like marvelous for them to build something like that. It's just fantastic. Yeah, that's pretty much like technologically, I'm a Windows user. I have a lot of money for a Mac, so.
While you were in attendance during a convention, you met a young aspiring Black artist. His talent, you said, was amazing, and it compelled you to give him some art supplies. If you had the opportunity, or if that young man is listening, what other advice do you have for him?
Keep going. Seriously, keep going. There aren't enough of us out here, if you ask me. Enough of us that are trying to take strides, you know? I hope that in me giving you those tools, that it enables you, provides you with some amount of inspiration to continue on. And the kid he's so smart. He's so smart. He's so artistically skilled. He's a young kid. He was like, I want to say 12, 13. I don't know. Might be overshooting it there. Just seeing someone so young, some Black kid, kind of just like come up to me and ask these questions. I'm 21, so we're like 7 years apart. Like, that's barely anything if you ask me.
Exactly.
But it's like looking at him, I saw a lot of my younger self, and like he was shrouded in this cloud of unknowing. He didn't know like a direction. He had no idea where he wanted to go, and that's why his mother brought him back to my booth at this convention. She's like, "Oh, I'm bringing my baby here tomorrow. Like, y'all gonna be here tomorrow, right? Like, I'm bringing him here. I'll be here. You be here, okay?" They came back every day of the convention to talk. It was fantastic. Yeah, I saw in that kid just so much promise, so much hope. And it does something to you. If you don't have that same influence in your life, and you're the Superman at this point, you have the opportunity to give some kid hope. And it was like right there. He was right in my face. This isn't over Twitch. This isn't over Twitter or Instagram. This isn't like he isn't watching a show on TV that I might be on or something like that, you know, or worked on. He's physical. He's there. That's the metaphor. It's
what you're doing is definitely inspirational. I guarantee that changed his life.
Yeah, I definitely hope so, because I gave him like original sketches, and I gave him original sketches, a bunch of my pencils, some I can't get because art stores are closed right now. But yeah, I felt like it would help him a lot more than me. Like, for me, it's an $8 pencil, you know. For him, it might be his dreams, his hopes, and his aspiration. It meant so much more, and I'm like, I need to do this now. Like, this is an opportunity to help change someone's life for the better, like that positivity. And
you made an investment in someone you didn't know. Sometimes it is a small gesture gesture, a small acknowledgement that impacts someone's world in a major way. I appreciate it. You're a giver and you're also a supporter. So that's, people see that in you and they'll hear this podcast. I want to make certain that people can follow, subscribe, and continue to support you. Where can that be done?
I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm the KAINONAUT, KAINONAUT, on like pretty much every social. I'm on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, not Facebook, but pretty much anywhere. And I'm always open for conversation, and I'm always there for people, because I believe that you never know when you can change a person's life, and you never know when they need some advice. People come into my stream all the time asking questions, and honestly, I don't know if I should, but I always stop and just break things down, get them to understand something that I understand, or at least give them my understanding of it. You know, sometimes people just need direction, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no reason for me to withhold information. I care about putting out love.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for another great End User Talk podcast. I want to thank KAINONAUT for joining us and you for listening.